You just gotta have the fearlessness to really take those shots. You know, because you miss those shots, then you have to deal with the criticism. You have to deal with
us talking about it, right?
Right. So, you know, and a lot of times, a lot of people kind of get a little apprehensive about taking those shots because of that.
Right when we mentioned it, seemed like you started smiling already, just thinking about the word.
Yeah. Well, it's always been a myth to me as to why certain people don't really like those situations because of the pressure. You know, because we've all lost games before. So it's not like by you missing that shot, you're about to face something that you will never face again or haven't faced in the past. You know what I mean? We've all come up short at one time or another. So you just gotta kind of let it all hang out and trust your skills and trust the work that you've put in.
There are some mountains that can be climbed by people like you and me. We got to get a little bit better condition, but I mean, it's not like the mountain climber mountains that would be way beyond our skill level. But some of these mountains that can be climbed by you and me, it takes a day to get to the top, and then you camp up there and you come down the next day. And on many of these places in Switzerland where you can do that, about halfway up the mountain is what they call the halfway house, halfway up the mountain. So a group of people starts off with a guide in the morning, and about noon, you're kind of tired, and you've been walking now for 4 or 5 hours, and you're coming up to the halfway house, and it's just it's a wonderful sight. Because as soon as you enter in the halfway house, you can smell the food, and they're getting ready for a good lunch, and you sit down, there's a fire in the fireplace, and there's nice soft chairs, and you can just rest your body and refresh your body. And so the people go into the halfway house, and they eat and laugh and enjoy and just really just kind of take in that wonderful, refreshing atmosphere. About an hour and a half after being in the halfway house, the guide gets up and says, well, gang, it's time to put on your gear. We got to hike. We got to get on up to the top. This is a fact. About half the people decide not to go on up to the top. They're sitting around the table and they're just saying, you know what, go on up. You're going to be coming by here tomorrow. You're going to be having lunch here again tomorrow. We're just going to hang here. And so the people that want to get to the top, they put their stuff on and they kind of leave. And the rest of the people sit behind. They eat a little bit more food, get around the piano, sing some songs, get around the fireplace, enjoy the fire, warm themselves by the fire. And play games all afternoon, kind of enjoy themselves. But about 4:30, 4:45 in the afternoon, without anybody saying a word, people who stayed in the halfway house, they slowly go over to where the window is, the big window, and they start looking outside, and they start looking up at the top of that mountain, and as they look at the top of that mountain, they see their friends. Their friends are now getting the tents out, and they're getting ready to prepare for the night, and it becomes very quiet, very somber. Because everybody in the halfway house realizes the mistake they've made. They've sold their mission for a little bit of comfort for a few hours. Next morning, down come their friends, and by noon, they come into the halfway house. And when they come in the halfway, they are laughing, they're high-fiving, they're talking about what they've seen, where they've been, experiences, the fact that it was almost impossible to get up there. In fact, they had to help each other get up there, and how they joined teams and held hands, and they just tell them all these stories and talk about the pictures they've taken, and they got the group picture up there with the flag at the top, and the people who remain behind, they don't say much. They just eat their lunch and then follow the rest of them down to the bottom of the hill where their friends are waiting for them. And those who paid the price and went to the top, who understood now is the time to reach the mission, they hug and tell stories and celebrate. And the others, they just kind of slip off and get in their car and go home because they realize they're never going to be what they wanted to be. They're never going to see what they wanted to see. They're never going to do what they wanted to do because they failed to realize when they're at the halfway house, now's the time to rest, and they go on.
You need to focus on solutions, not ideas. All of us here are really creative, and we come up with loads of ideas throughout the day, and we become really excited about that. And it's like, dude, we should start a company around that. But that's when you actually go to the other side, where you talk to, where you find out what someone actually a problem that they have and solve that is when real value comes out.
I think my biggest tip is just get started. I meet a lot of young entrepreneurs who have good ideas or bad ideas or some ideas, and you don't want to be a person who just talks and talks and talks. You have to actually go and do something. And don't worry about if it's the perfect thing or not. There is this myth of entrepreneurship that you'll have the one genius idea and suddenly everything falls into place. It doesn't work like that. It's a hard slog. There's a lot of things to do wrong, a lot of things you'll do right. The sooner you get started, the sooner you'll get somewhere.
Optimism has a place, but I think even more so for the first-time entrepreneur, you need to be pragmatically pessimistic. What I mean by that is you need to define all of the worst-case scenarios in terms of financial loss, time loss, etc. Look at what you will learn if that happens and accept and come to terms with that before you ever start. If you don't do that and you go straight into battling the world, trying to conquer the world with rose-colored glasses on, the first time you hit a major hiccup, you're going to become really demoralized and you will quit.
And I think, where is the opportunity? The opportunity always lies in the place where people complain. Some people sit there complain, you think, if I can solve that complaint, that's the opportunity.
My dream was for to be able to one day, hear rappers that I looked up to on the radio and be like, yo, what if Jay-Z, whoever, what if they heard of me? What if they thought I was dope? You know what I'm saying? That was where my mentality always was with it.
And I think the reality is just, not quite so glamorous. There's there's an ugly side to being an entrepreneur. And also just more importantly, what you're actually spending your time on is just a lot of hard work. Sam mentioned this, but you're basically just sitting at your desk, heads down, focused, answering customer support emails, doing sales, figuring out hard engineering problems. So it's really important that you kind of go in with eyes wide open.
I would say that the lesson learned for me to anybody else out there interested in starting a business is please find something you're passionate about, because it's so much work, it's so much time, it's so much effort. But if the subject matter is something that you genuinely love to be involved with, it's not going to be that big of a drag, and it's not going to be that much work. It's going to be incredibly exciting and rewarding, because to your point, you'll feel like you're living the life that you're meant to live.
ESPN called me. They did a story on me this past summer, but they called me one day, and I picked up the phone. They said, "Is this Inky Johnson?" I said, "Last time I checked, I'm Inky Johnson." They said, "Is this the same guy that said if you could change what happened to you, you wouldn't?" I said, "Absolutely." They said, "It's our understanding the game of football meant the world to you." I said, "At one point, it did." They said, "It's our understanding that your family was banking on you making it to the NFL so they can have a better way of life." I said, "Yep, that's correct." They said, "We're coming to see you." I said, "All right, cool, come on." They said, "But we don't want to see you in Atlanta. We want to see you in Neyland Stadium on the exact yard line where your life changes. The same time of day. The only thing that won't be present is Air Force's team." I said, "All right, cool." And so they take me to Neyland Stadium, they put me on the exact yard line where my life changed. They said, "Now tell your younger self why you wouldn't stop your injury if you could. If you could be in the NFL right now making millions of dollars, tell your younger self why you wouldn't change that situation if you could." And I say the reason I wouldn't change it, believe it or not, it has nothing to do with me. On a personal level, he thought I was going to say, because of the man that I've become, the perspective that I've acquired, my faith has been fortified. He thought I was going to say something like that. I said, no, it has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with the lives that have been affected by the result of the process and the thing that I represent in the world. What my spirit represents when somebody see me, they think perseverance. What my spirit represents when somebody see me, they think don't quit. What my spirit represents when somebody see me, they think that's a quality individual right there. What my character represents in the world. And every single day we're putting something out like that represents something. When people see that, they think it's a thought that comes to the mind. When he said gold standard, he gave me that, I felt a certain type of way. When he gave me the gold standard, I felt a certain type, I felt different. Gold standard, I felt like that went with me. Because I think in what I do, the line of business I'm in, I'm the gold standard. Because I don't compromise. And every single day, I'm going to give you my very best. You can bet your bottom dollar. Every single day, I'm going to bring that gold standard to life. And I'm not just bringing it in one aspect of life. I'm bringing it in every single aspect of life. I'm not going to be one of these people in the world that's a public success, but they're a private failure. Meaning they give everything they got to one aspect of life, but the other areas, they lack off. No, I'm going to give every single thing I got to every aspect of my life because I represent something. When people see me, they think something. Whether that's character, never giving up, never surrendering. And the thing that we can never do is forget what we represent. Because that's how guys end up on the bridge on a cardboard box sleep. They forget what they represent when life hits them with adversity. My only charge for you, never forget what you represent.
The two things we really zero in on people are, two things. They sound simple, they end up being very difficult. Courage and genius. Courage is the one we talk about a lot because it's the one that people can learn. Courage, which is to say not giving up in the face of adversity, just being absolutely determined to succeed, is something that you can like force yourself to do. It can be very painful. You can force yourself to do it. The genius part is a little bit hard to force yourself to do. Courage without genius might not get you where you need to go, but genius without courage almost certainly won't.
Just do my work. For me, I've always been very utilitarian on all of this stuff, and that's what coming from punk rock gave to me, where I don't feel like I'm anybody, and someone wants me to sign something, I'm like, sure. I don't exactly understand why, but I'll do it for you. I don't think I'm anything.
Maybe it's also not just because of the punk rock mentality, it's also because you were scooping ice cream not so long ago, and maybe there's an element of insecurity in you that unless you keep working and keep striving, you could end up back there.
Oh, I kind of figure that's eventual. I keep moving forward boldly because I have nothing to lose. I'm nobody from nowhere. You should really understand that. I am from the minimum wage working world 100 years ago. But I don't ever have it in my head that that's any more than one tour away of coming back. And so I like to work. It's not about money or fame or anything. It's about activity and challenge.
I felt like the odds was against us, from the summer. We just had so many things going with our team. We shuffled in different lineups. We shuffled in different players. We made a trade at the deadline. And I can't sit here right now and say that that the finals was a part of my thinking. It was not. And even when you saw me at one point early in the season, I think it was in December or January, and you looked at me like, okay, Mona, I know you, what you doing. And it's crazy because right before you seen me, I had already kind of hit that switch. I was like, okay, I'm not quite sure what we're going to do with this ball club. We're not playing good basketball, but you can't sell yourself short. But to sit here, I can't even lie to you, sit here and say will we be a part of the finals? I would be definitely lying to you if I said, yes, we would be in the finals in January, February.
Yeah, you didn't think that was the case at all?
It was at points where it was like, okay, will the Cavs even make the playoffs? And I was like, okay, I'm not selling it for that conversation. Now that's ridiculous. Now I got to get into the postseason, and I've always said, if I get into the postseason, no matter if I'm a 1 seed or 8 seed, or in this case, a 4 seed, I believe that we can do something. And look at it, we did something. We did something.
We know from our past experiences that big things start small. The biggest oak starts from an acorn, and you've got to recognize, if you want to do anything new, you've got to be willing to let that acorn grow into a little sapling and then finally into a small tree, and maybe one day it'll be a big business on its own.
And in fact, that's one of the mottos for one of your initiatives, and forgive my pronunciation of the Latin, but Gradatim ferociter. What does that mean to you?
Well, it means step by step ferociously. And it's the motto for Blue Origin. Basically, you can't skip steps. You have to put one foot in front of the other. Things take time. There are no shortcuts. But you want to do those steps with, passion and ferocity.
I looked at lots of companies and why I thought they don't succeed over time. We've had a more rapid turnover of companies. And I said, what did they fundamentally do wrong? Like, what do those companies all do wrong? And usually it's just they missed the future. And so I think, for me, I just tried to focus on that and say, what is that future really going to be, and how do we create it?
One of the things that's really interesting about the Old Testament is that, and the Jews in the Old Testament, is that they don't take the path of Cain every time they're walloped by God, which is like fairly frequently, they say, we must have done something wrong and we have to set ourselves right. And that's an unbelievably heroic attitude, because that's the alternative to cursing fate. It's like you take the responsibility for failure onto yourself, and you think, well, if I just had my act together a little bit more, if I took advantage of every opportunity that was put in front of me, if I wasn't resentful and bitter, then I could have done something that would have tilted the situation in a different direction. And like, that's almost inevitably true. Dostoevsky, I think, said something like, every man is responsible for everything that happens to him and everything that happens to everyone else. And that's, you know, it's a crazy statement, right? It's a crazy statement. And he was a pretty extreme person in many, many ways. But there's a level at which that's metaphysically true, you know, because what happens is that it's failure to act often that's the most catastrophic. You know, I mean, it's to not do the right thing when the situation presents itself, and it's very specific. You know, you're constantly in situations where you could do the right thing if you were willing to take a risk that's actually of relatively moderate size. And you know that you could take the risk, and you know that you should take the risk, and you don't. And that happens to people all the time. And then what happens is the thing that they didn't oppose grows a little bit, and they shrink a little bit. And that starts a loop, hey?
What are you gonna do when you wake up and you feel lost? You feel less than, you feel a sense of either depression or despair and no direction. What I do is this: I show up. I show up, man. A buddy of mine told me when I was at a super low point in my life. He said, "Hey, man, show up even if if your eyes are bleeding and your life is low. Show up anyway. Show up."
It looks like you always go out of your comfort zone, right? Coming onto an island that was completely deserted, no fresh water. You didn't even have the money to buy it, and now you're sleeping on a tent on the beach, trying to figure out how to get fresh water here. You do that often. You did it with the airline.
I mean, I was just somebody that experienced the bad experience of traveling on airlines. I was actually trying to get to the BVI, the British Virgin Islands, one day from Puerto Rico, and the same lovely lady was waiting for me, and I'd been away for 3 weeks, and American Airlines bumped the flight. And so I went to the back of the airport, I hired a plane, I hired a blackboard, I wrote Virgin Airlines one way, $29 to the BVI, went around all the people who'd been bumped, and I filled my first plane. And that got me thinking, you know, that airlines do bump people. They don't care about you or me, particularly in the air. And so so I then rang up Boeing and said, "Do you have any second-hand 747s?"
No kidding. I mean, it was literally that. You just sat in the airport and said, "I'm starting an airline right now because I'm frustrated."
Exactly. And I think most of the best entrepreneurial ideas come out of frustration. I think, you know, if you're frustrated about something, the best way of sorting it out is get out and do it, and you've got yourself a business.
If somebody said to you, you'll have or you'll be as successful as you are now, what would you had said back then?
I believe you. That's what I would have said. Because I did believe.
Yeah,
I believed in it. I had very few people who told me that. I had a small group of people that would tell me something like that. Other than that, it was just me telling myself.
Yep.
So if someone came up to me and told me that all the way back then, I'd say, "You're damn right."
If you don't love it, you won't make it through the long period of pain that is inevitable. So make sure that you take care of yourself during the process. Make sure that you take care of your mental health, your physical health while you're doing it, because it's a long road.
A lot of people come to me and they say, "Well, I want to be an entrepreneur." And I go, "Oh, that's great. What's your idea?" And they go, "Well, I don't have one yet." And I say, "Well, I think you should go get a job as a busboy or something until you find something you're really passionate about, because it's a lot of work." And I'm convinced that about half of what separates the successful entrepreneurs from the non-successful ones is pure perseverance. It is so hard. You pour so much of your life into this thing. There are such rough moments in time that most people give up. I don't blame them. I mean, it's really tough, and it consumes your life. I mean, if you've got a family, and you're in the early days of a company, I can't imagine how one could do it. I'm sure it's been done, but it's rough. I mean, because it's pretty much an 18-hour-a-day job, 7 days a week for a while. So unless you have a lot of passion about this, you're going to not survive. You're going to give it up. So you got to have an idea or a problem or a wrong that you want to right that you're passionate about. Otherwise, you're not going to have the perseverance to stick it through. And I think that's half the battle right there. It's hard to remember how bad it was, in early 80s, with IBM taking over the world with the PC, with DOS out there. It was far worse than the Apple II. And they tried to copy the Apple II, and they'd done a pretty bad job. And you needed to know a lot. And so things were kind of slipping backwards. And Macintosh was, you saw the 1984 commercial. I hope you have that in your archives. Macintosh was basically this relatively small company, in Cupertino, California, taking on the Goliath, IBM, and saying, wait a minute, your way is wrong. This is not the way we want computers to go. This is not the legacy we want to leave. This is not what we want our kids to be learning. This is wrong, and we are going to show you the right way to do it. And here it is. It's called Macintosh, and this is so much better that it's going to beat you. And we are going to do it. And that's what Apple stood for.
Do not cast pearls before swine. And what that means is that if people are not listening to you, stop talking to them. And that is the best piece of advice that I can give you. And what happens is that if you stop talking to people who aren't listening to you and start watching them instead, they will tell you what they're up to. But so if you have things to say them, but you find people that will listen, talk to them. The ones who aren't listening, pull back. Because you're devaluing what you have to say by offering it to an audience that does nothing but reject it. And that's a good guideline to life in general. So pull back.
I say to my girls all of the time that your real work is to figure out where your power base is and to work on the alignment of your personality, your gifts that you have to give, with the real reason why you're here. That's the number one thing you have to do, is to work on yourself and to fill yourself up and keep your cup full. Keep yourself full. Now, I used to be afraid of that. I used to be afraid, particularly from people who say, oh, she's so full of herself. She's so full of herself. And now I embrace it. I consider it a compliment that I am full of myself. Because only when you're full, I'm full, I'm overflowing, my cup runneth over. I have so much to offer and so much to give. And I am not afraid of honoring myself. It's miraculous when you think about it.
There is an advantage to being what I like to call now hardcore. Hardcore. I don't know quite how to describe it. It's a combination of tenacious and dedicated and passionate and committed, something like that. Hardcore. I learned about being hardcore from math concentrators at Harvard. I'm not going to ask whether we have any math concentrators here, but I would say that's where I got kind of my lesson. I mean, people could just go crazy, focused. And it wasn't just that people were genius, but working and working and working and working. I'd sit in my room working on a problem set, and after 3 hours, I'm a little ADD. I just couldn't take it. The most hardcore people could just power through anything. And the advantage of being that tenacious and dedicated and committed, I claim, it helped us at Microsoft. It was fundamental at Microsoft, but I learned it here at Harvard.
I think success, first of all, is knowing my purpose in life. As I have watched and observed successful people, what I have discovered about them is they really have figured out why they're here. They really do have their act together. And knowing their purpose in life is a stability for them. So that when everyone else is rocking and rolling and things are a little unsteady and people are kind of leaving the ship and people are kind of abandoning their causes, these people, they hold steady right throughout the storm because they have a true North Star. They truly are focused. It becomes an anchor in their life that just holds them steady. And the anchor is a confidence based upon a knowledge of purpose.
Oscar, how did you go from being my assistant to a famous big-time movie producer?
Just by never taking no for an answer and following, believing I could do anything, which I learned in the Nice Dad studio.
All right.
Seriously, this guy would just, over and over again, I'd never seen anything like it. He would just say, "You're smart, figure it out. You're smart, figure it out. You're smart, figure it out. I don't care how long it takes, just make it beautiful." And that sounded a little weird at the time because you're used to working at a restaurant or being a landscaper. But it was actually really empowering, and it took me a while to figure that out. And the more movies I made, the more I realized it didn't matter. It kind of applies to everything.
You know, one of the things that I tell people when they ask me for advice about what they should do when they're wanting to start their own business or take a next step in their career is to actually start small. I think a lot of people try to, they kind of psych themselves out or they get too overwhelmed with how big something can get. But the truth is, you really just got to start small and you got to prove it before you scale it.
There's a lot of conventional wisdom out there, built up over time and built through all the learnings from all the companies. And this may be fully applicable to most of the companies out there. But before it's applied to your organization, I highly recommend that you question it because it could be absolutely fatal for your success.
You went to Harvard and you dropped out. Have you ever thought how your life could be better off if you had gotten your Harvard degree?
Well, I'm a weird dropout because I take college courses all the time. I love learning company courses and things, so I loved being a student. And there were smart people around, and you know, they fed you and they gave you these nice grades that made you feel smart. So I feel it was unfortunate that I didn't get to stay there, but I don't think I missed any knowledge because, you know, whatever I needed to learn, I was still in a learning mode.
Try to do something that you would want to do anyway, whether it's, it doesn't necessarily have to be a very successful business, because when you do decide to become an entrepreneur and start a business, chances are it's not gonna become like a multi-million-dollar business. So at least do something that you love in the beginning so that even if it fails, you'd still enjoy it.
That whatever you do, somebody can do it better. You have to bring your A game in every single day. There's nothing unique about any one individual. What's unique is their passion, their ability to execute, to meet targets and exceed them. The minute you lose that ability, in capitalism, you're gone. It's a fair trade. The engine that makes you rich can take it all away from you. There are no guarantees. I think that's incredibly important.
Don't solicit feedback on your product, your idea, or your business just for validation purposes. Be really careful about that. You want to tell the people that can help move your idea forward, but if you're just looking to your friend, coworker, husband, wife for validation, be careful, because out of love and concern, a lot of people will express some concerns, and it can stop a lot of multi-million-dollar ideas right in their tracks in the beginning.
So the most important part of getting to a goal is to start feeling it now, is to start acting as if, right? If you want to be that leader, if you want to be that author, if you want to be that painter, all it takes is one action, and you truly are in the process of becoming it. So it's funny that I am literally basically done with the book, and I'm like, can I call myself an author yet? I've written a book. Of course, because you have taken the action, you're doing the actions. There is no final anointing of anyone. There's no ceremony, there's no fireworks. You just start acting as if and feeling it and envisioning it and picturing it. And soon enough, you become it, right? So everybody starts somewhere. So whether you are a famous ballerina or an Olympic swimmer, they all started somewhere. They all had to take that first class. They all had to take that first leap into the water, right? And at what point can you start calling yourself a swimmer, a dancer, an author? It's the second that you start taking action and you start thinking it and you're feeling it, right? It's about embodying it. So my biggest tip for you is to start seeing yourself as that person and start taking the small actions of being that person that you want to be. That's the only thing that is separating you from actually being it. So you have to act as if in order to really start getting that ball rolling, and all of a sudden you are.
Make sure you choose, when you're trying to decide whether or not an idea is good enough to pursue or a particular business is something you want to go forward with. Make sure that it's the type of business that when you're standing in the shower, it's the thing you want to think about for the next 10 or 20 years.
To have the level of success that I want to have, it's difficult to spread it out and do multiple things. It's in order to be world class, and I've made a decision, I want to be world class. And it takes such a desperate, obsessive focus to excel on the level that I want to make movies. I was Star Wars. When I was young, I sat in the movie theater and watched Star Wars, and I just couldn't believe that movie made me feel like that, just floored and just stunned by the creativity. And I'm realizing that in order to move people in that way, in order to touch people in that way, you really got to focus with all of your fiber and all of your heart and all of your creativity.
Failure is part of life. I mean, the difference for me, though, is I look at failure as a stepping stone to success. It's a speed bump. I know I'm going to fail, but it's not failure if you learn something. And so, gosh, I've made so many mistakes. I've screwed so many things up, but every time I do, it becomes a way for me to explain to someone else what it takes. It's like, here's what I've done. I think I have the ability to influence people because I talk about my failures. I talk about all the things that messed me up, but I show people that I didn't let it stop me, and you don't let it stop you. And I think that's really the secret in that area.
And if everything you touch was successful, you probably won't be able to relate to people as much.
No, you'll be relate, and also it's be total bullshit, and everyone knows it's bullshit. And also you'd be bored silly. Right. I mean, think about it. If you just said, I want this and it happened, I want this and it happened, people don't value what they don't fight for. It's like you see kids sometimes your parents will say, you're not going to value this if you don't work for it. And your kid going, I'll value it, just give it to me, right? But it's true. Yeah. The things we've worked the hardest for, we value the most. Yeah. So I think, the purpose of a goal is not getting it anyway. The purpose of the goal, is who you become. Who you become is going to make you happy or it's going to make you sad. Yeah. So I'm not looking for an effortless approach. Sure. There's no such thing.
I'm in meetings a lot. My calendar gets very full with those. And then at night, after the kids have gone to bed, I'm on email a great deal. I get messages during the day. That's my chance to give long responses. And then over the weekend, I send a lot of mail as well. I take 2 weeks a year to just go off and read and think, where I'm not interrupted by work or anything else. I'm just solidly trying to think about the future, and people get to send me things to read as part of that so-called Think Week. So it's a nice mix of things. About 25% of the time then I'm out traveling around, meeting with customers, Europe, Asia, and that sort of helps me think, okay, do we have the right priorities? What are people responding well to, and what would they like to see us do better?
I don't like to think too far ahead.
So you haven't thought alternative
No, I don't like
careers,
thinking too far ahead. People set like goals, long distance goals and shit. That's too much for me. I already feel like I'm living it. And then I just carry on doing that, carry on day by day, already living the final goal, the goal of being the world champion. I already carry myself like I'm a world champion. I already speak like I'm a world champion. And that's it, I just carry on day by day. So I'll take it as it comes. Again, like I said, you were asking me about the future. I'll let you know a little bit closer, you know what I mean? All I can see right now is the gold. That's all I can see.
We took a lot of pride in trailblazing and how the game was played back at that time through we would intimidate teams and we would want to dominate teams, but also too we also had the thought process that a team was never going to outwork us. We're going to be the hardest working team in the country.
The best piece of advice that I was given when I started my modeling career was make sure that you okay, so there was a lot of things that were given to me because, you know, everybody likes to give you advice. One thing that stayed with me is you're as good as your last job. And so every job I treated as if it were my last job. And I think that that kind of gave me a reputation of hardworking, ready to do whatever it takes to get this shot. And I think that that's very important in any industry.
The thing that I do at my company that is very unusual is that we are completely unreasonable, without reason. We don't use, yes, I'm logical, okay, yes, I'm a sane person, but when it comes to achieving a target, we do it with, like, we abandon reason and logic. We don't talk about, yeah, but, we never start, yeah, but, or no, we can't, or we couldn't because, or it didn't happen because. Anytime you're making sense of why something didn't work, we don't have the budget, we can't do that because, yeah, but we're different. You are being reasonable. The great things that have happened on this planet and continue to happen are because people are unreasonable. They literally abandon reason and logic. They defy the universe. Now, if you look around, if you're a logical person, if you're a person that has to make sense of it beforehand, then spend some time looking around the universe, look at nature, look at all the things that are done every day that literally defy gravity, defy possibility, defy physics. It's all over the place if you need to be reasonable. Now, in my case, I don't need to be reasonable because there's enough cases of super successful people doing things that are amazing, whether it was a manufacturing, a new product, or whether it was Steve Jobs coming back to Apple and turning that company around. Every day, look at Amazon. Look what Amazon has done. Okay, now you look at it, you're like, dude, that's a no-brainer. Make all products available online. Now it's a no-brainer. Now it's like, it's so logical. Look at Velcro. Velcro was like, God, I should have thought of that. See, but beforehand, it was completely out of reason that you could stick things together because they scratch one another. You understand what I'm saying? So look, this is what I want you to try. Try this in your life. It's going to be very difficult. It's one of the most difficult things I do is being unreasonable because all the people I'm surrounded by are trying to make sense of why they can't do something. Quit making sense of why you can't do something and become unreasonable until you do something.
It's all in the mindset. When you get up in the morning, you do what you normally do. I would eventually say a lot of you here probably turn on your cell phones, your computers, and what's the latest email, what's the latest text that comes in. You start your day off like that. That's your mindset. Try this. Get up in the morning, do whatever you have to do. Don't turn the computer on. Don't turn the TV on. Go right back to bed again. Either lay there or sit there and just bring the universe to you. Here's how you do it. You just be. It's virtually impossible when you first do it because 1,000 thoughts come through your head. We're human beings. So what you do is you're sitting in bed, look at the wall, look at the off TV set, look at the ceiling, look at the door, look at something in the room that gets your attention and just look at it and just be for a couple of minutes. Not 10 minutes, not 20 minutes, not 2 days, just be. When your mind wanders, find another spot in the room to look at so you're back in present time, even for a couple of minutes. Now go about your day. Don't think about what you're going to do. For that split few minutes, you're now becoming part of a universe, which is also part of global thinking.
I think things through. I'm a games and theory guy, and I sort of ponder options before I make decisions. So I'm less the act from my heart guy and just sort of say what I'm thinking, and I'll internalize a bit and try and imagine, like a chess game, the possible outcomes and then act accordingly to what I think might be the best. And I think that goes sort of with what a magician thinks through as well. Right. Like a stage magician has to keep 2 steps ahead, look over here, while something else is going on over here. Or a close-up magician's got to be very aware of outs and options. So I guess magician at heart would probably be that. I sort of think like a magician.
My parents couldn't afford to put me in a lot of like dance classes and things like that. But they would throw me into like the community ones, and it created this...
The free ones, yeah.
The free ones, yeah. And then eventually when I started acting, or it started with modeling and then it turned into acting, they didn't approve of it. They didn't have the money to support it. So with my jobs, I would pay for the headshots, and I would go take classes and take 4 different buses and a subway to get downtown from the suburbs in Toronto where I lived to get to the class. Like I wanted it, and if I didn't actually put in the work for it, I wouldn't have gotten to where I am, and it really had to be from within.
I'm a very effective person when I'm by myself, and when I have to work in groups, like I fall to pieces. Like, does not work well with others is what it said on every report card I got until I dropped out of high school in the 10th grade. And I think that's very true. So for me, that creative process is one where, and finding that cadence that you talked about of making a video every day was one where I removed every obstruction between me and finishing it. And other people are the biggest obstructions. I have an idea. Well, let's talk through that idea. And the metaphor that I use of discussing ideas in groups is like when an idea at its inception, it's an ice cube and it's rock hard and you can look at it, you can see it, and you can study it and you know what it is. But when a discussion begins, you have to pass that ice cube around the room. It starts to melt and melt and melt. And after enough discussions, the ice cube's gone and everybody's hands are wet and nobody quite remembers what that idea was. That's a major obstruction. So for me, when it comes to creation, like remove that obstruction. Don't talk, don't involve other people, don't need anything from anyone to realize this new video every 24 hours, and that's wildly effective.
Really sad to see that people are disenchanted and nihilistic and depressed and anxious and aimless and perverse and vengeful and all of those things. It's terrible. And then to see people question whether that's necessary and then to start to rise out of it. It's like, it's so fun. Like last night I was after my talk, it's overwhelming. I don't usually think about these things, but I was after my talk last night, and so all these people line up, and they have their 15 seconds with me, and they're kind of tentative. They're excited and attentive when they come up to talk to me, and then they have 15 seconds of time to tell me something. I'm really listening to them, and they're hesitant about whether or not to share the good news about their life, and I think it's often because when people share good news about their life, people don't necessarily respond positively. They don't get encouragement. And people need so little encouragement. It's just unbelievable. And so they'll tell me something good, and I think, oh, that's so good. Somebody says, oh, I'm getting along way better with my father. I hadn't seen him for 10 years, and now we get along. It's like, God, great. And then the power of that, you can't overstate the power of that for individuals to get their life together. The individual is an unbelievably powerful force, and every single person who gets their act together a little bit has the capacity to spread that around them. It's a chain reaction, and so it's a lovely thing to see.
Here's what I think. I think we get one at bat. The number one thing that scares me in life is regret. I really, really, really don't want to be on my deathbed, whether that's tomorrow or when I'm 97, and think, I should have done that. That spooks me, right? Like hard work, people judging me, trolling me on social media, like all the stuff that normal people worry about, I don't worry about. I worry about regret. And so I'm trying to squeeze everything out of my life. And so, yeah, I do a lot.
Fail early, fail often, fail forward. It's always a little bit frustrating to me when people have a negative relationship with failure. Failure is a massive part of being able to be successful. You have to get comfortable with failure. You have to actually seek failure. Failure is where all of the lessons are. When you go to the gym and you work out, you're actually seeking failure. You want to take your muscles to the point where you get to failure, because that's where the adaptation is. That's where growth is. Successful people fail a lot. They fail a whole lot more than they succeed, but they extract the lessons from the failure and they use that the energy and they use the wisdom to come around to the next phase of success. You gotta take a shot. You have to live at the edge of your capabilities. You gotta live where you're almost certain you're gonna fail. That's the reason for practice. Practice is controlled failure. You're getting to your limit, getting to your limit, getting to your limit. You can't lift that, you can't do that, until you get to the point that all of a sudden your body makes the adjustment and then you can do it. Failure actually helps you to recognize the areas where you need to evolve. So fail early, fail often, fail forward.
Too many of you in here have ego around your time when it's the only thing you got. So the reason I always know is because I work. Because I work. I work. I try things, I test, I DM you back, I tweet, I work. So when you're in shit, you taste it. And when you've done it for 20 years, you see patterns. Facebook's still underpriced. You just can't target 22 to 25-year-old African-American fans of football because other people are doing that too now. It's just like Google. Early on, you could just target soccer. One word, 5 cents a click. I did it. Wine, wine, wine. But then I had to put, at the end of the game, now, I got to put 2013, Heller Sellers, Zinfandel, like long tail. Real estate. If you're right about London, look, this is my favorite. Do you understand that somebody once bought this building for $1? Somebody bought the land we're on for $1 once. That happened. It was a long time ago. How do you know? You're a practitioner. The reason I do is how I learn. You got to put out, all of you are like, well, I can't do podcasting and Facebook and Twitter. Oh, but I can vlog, but I can't. Why? If you want it so bad. My thing is why? If you want it so bad, why can't, if you want to have a media company around Caribbean food culture, why can't you? You know what I want to see? I want to see all your minutes. I want to see all your minutes. I want to give you D-Rock for the day. I want to watch you from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep. Let me promise you something. You're going to get exposed. So that's why Daily V happened. Because you guys were, like, a lot of you didn't know me before Daily V. How many people knew me before Daily V? Well, not bad, right? You got to really know me post Daily V. Yeah. You heard hard work and hustle before, you were confused. And I've been doing that shit every day for 20 years.
Bigger is better. How many agree with this? Okay? If you can live on 900 grand, the only people that won't go to 9 million are the people that are selfish. Unselfish people grow their businesses. Selfish people don't. Okay, if you're taking notes, if you're going to walk away with something today, I'm talking to the able people here. Give me the name of a great company that has 7 employees. I'm waiting. Give me the name of a great company that doesn't spend a load of money on advertising. Who is this company? Tell me, give me one name of any company that's great, this small. See, you built a business on a fantasy, right? Like I'm going to get a State Farm. I'm going to get a State Farm. I'm going to get an Allstate company. I'm going to be an Allstate guy, and I'm going to make 900 grand a year. You're selfish, folks. See what I'm saying about the selfish person makes what they need. The unselfish person says, I'm going to make more than I need.